It's the George that brings everybody to, not only to Picton, to the Shire. It's the hub of the whole district. And when it was shut for 2 years. When it was flooded out, the whole district was dead, yeah.
The George is important to the town because it's the oldest building that is still in use in the town. We don't know if it's named after the Kings or it's named after George Harper, who was involved in getting the place built, in financing. Built by people who only had were amateurs at building. Simple in some ways, although very hard work. Donald Bradman and his wife, they actually stopped here on their honeymoon. He certainly came to Picton.
Just like the atmosphere of the place. It's got the old-fashioned English type atmosphere of a hotel.
My connection with the actual pub itself started on my 18th birthday in January 1967. And when I started, this place, to put it bluntly, was like almost drinking in a men's toilet. The bar was tiled, the floor was always wet, there was always guys spilling their beer, you know, and the toilets were absolutely terrible. A couple of guys who sort of owned sections of the bar, they'd always be there, you know, and we used to reckon they rented a seat so they could always sit in the same spot. And there was one guy who was a fairly tragic bloke who used to sit at the end. He'd been a Second World War vet who'd been locked up by the Japanese. I think he was trying to drink his memories away, but it was a sort of a sad little part of it.
Shara came here in '68 and he was an eccentric bloke and he was a visionary, he was ahead of his time.
I've seen him throw everybody out at 7 o'clock because he wanted to watch something on television.
He put up a plaque in the hotel saying that it was built in 1819, which was completely impossible because there were no European settlement in this area until at least 1822.
And even if he was swearing and cursing at you, you knew he didn't mean it. That was just how he talked, you know. He was a unique kind of guy, yeah. He was the first guy to start brewing his own beer. Then in the early 70s, when waterbeds came out, he was the first one to get into waterbeds, and all these rooms behind us had waterbeds. Everyone would come out from Sydney because the waterbeds were a bit of a novelty, so everyone would come out to check out the waterbeds.
You know, he wanted to turn the place into a dirty weekend for couples from Sydney, you know, when things were still in the 60s, still pretty straight-laced.
Later on in the 70s, he imported a pizza oven from Italy, and all the drinkers, everyone laughed at him. Nobody appreciated at that time, but now you look back and you realise he was a visionary, yeah.
He had a really good brewer when he first started. Herman was his name, and he was a German fellow, came from Germany, and he was very, very particular and very clean and made sure everything was clean. Well, Shara wasn't that way inclined, he was grubby. And him and Herman used to fight over because he'd bring these friends up from Sydney and want to take them through where the distillery was, and Herman didn't want people going in there, let alone, you know, grubby people. And this was what caused the rift between them eventually, and Herman left him. It was rather sad because the beer was never as good after Herman went. Oh, Shara was a character, but as he came here when he was 28, so he was quite a young fellow, really. He died in 2012. Hell of a lot of us came to that. There was probably 200 or 300 people there. And it was a very enjoyable day, really, because we had a few drinks on Shara, which was a bit different, because he wasn't renowned for shouting, I can assure you. But on that occasion, the beer was on him.